Well, appreciate this time with you together and talk a little bit about, where COLT goes and fits in, and also some of the things we're thinking about in the context of technology, which we're doing more and more of, also in the overall context of Success NC. But I see those things as not either or, they're very much connected. And I'd like just to kind of start back and tell you a little bit. I'm going to try to sit without falling down here. I used to consider myself a pretty good technology person, but I realized I lost that. A few weeks ago, I was leaving the house, and my 12-year-old was sitting there, and I told him to email me about something, and he just started giggling, and I didn't know what, and I said, well, what's so funny? He just said, email. He was just shaking his head. I realized it was like I had told him to send me a carrier pigeon. It was just, so I realized I have really lost it in terms of any technology credentials. But just a little bit tell you just about me in terms of how I became interested in the things I'm interested in. It actually had to do with technology. And years ago, I became very interested in technology, primarily in the context of manufacturing technologies, because I worked at a manufacturing facility while I was in college, and then had the opportunity to go to Japan and study in Japan, and I saw this just night and day difference. There were as many people in Japan working in this multi-million-dollar automobile facility, programming all the machines, as there were all of my peers who were primarily doing pick and pack type stuff at a factory in North Carolina. And so that day I decided that the things I was going to study was the two issues were going to be technology and workforce training. And so when I was in graduate school, I specifically went to the University of Maryland so that I could study with certain professors. And I went in this crazy field. It's called industrial psychology. So I was always on sort of the people side of technology, but I did that because I was able to work in the engineering school and the public policy school, but I was actually in the psychology department, so I have a degree in psychology. But make a long story short, or short story long, I ended up going to, just by happenstance, I ended up working within the U.S. Department of Labor and then the Department of Commerce in their technology labs, because back in the early 80s, there was this, this would have been the late 90s actually, or late 80s, there was this huge interest in technology and its impact on work, because at that time, that was when all the robotics were coming in, and everybody assumed that it was going to have such an impact on workplaces. The assumption at that time is we would all be working 30 hours a week because technology, and what happened though is that over a period of time there was a lot of technology implementation, but it didn't have any impact on workplaces. In fact, it made it less productive, but then it started kicking in, and that's one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years. Now people say, if you look at the one of the things I believe economically is that this is not, I hate it when people call it a recession, because this is not a normal recession. This is a resetting in what's going on. And some have called it, there's a book out now, The Race with Technology. And it's sort of the impact of globalization and technology. But what happened over the time, and the two things that drive me, you all are in different roles, and you have a lot of stuff that is the work part of what you do. It is the day-to-day grudge type things, and in any role you have those things you deal with. Some of those things are things that we put to you and you say, oh, those damn people in Raleigh, they're giving us a lot of work. But there's that reason why you're doing the work you do, and it's the passion of what you do. And the two things that really interest me, are those issues of how you can use education and training to further economic prosperity. And then what's really captured me in being in this role and when I was a college president is this notion of student success. How do we move more folks from registration lines to graduation lines? And the two are not disconnected by any means. In fact, that's what, if you look at what happened over the last, going back to when I started thinking about these things and I was working at these places, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, however long it's been. But if you look at that time period, what happened was everybody didn't cut back to a 30-hour work week. What happened is the divide came down in the middle, and so right now you either have to design it, create it, program it, build it, fix it, or maintain it. If you can't do that, you're going to be wiping it or serving it. And if you're wiping it or serving it, you're not making enough money to get above the poverty line. And so that's the reason why, and if you're doing these other things, then getting past high school, getting a credential in areas like healthcare, in areas like, as you know, the information technology, the credentials that are important, when a lot of times they're not our credentials, they're certifications. Same thing's happening with manufacturing, same thing's happening in these other areas where you see jobs mismatches. And so this notion of gaining a credential is becoming more and more the gateway into the careers where right now there are skills mismatches. And so that's the reason why there's a focus on student success. I mean, it is truly an economic issue, and I think that's why there's now more focus on community colleges than you have seen ever before. I mean, we had a 10-day period just about a month ago when the president was on the campus of Guilford Tech, Secretary of Education was on Wake Tech's campus. We had articles written about us in the Wall Street Journal and the Chicago Tribune. It wasn't because they just all of a sudden said, wow, community colleges, that's a pretty neat thing. It's because there's a realization that, you know, we're where the rubber meets the road, and if education is going to help turn the economy around, community colleges is where that happens. The challenge becomes is that since time I was in college to this point in time, things have changed in that there are now many more people who go to college than ever before. The problem is there aren't that many more people who finish college than there were at that time. So that's why if you look at the notion of student success being more important economically, we haven't been making the progress we need to. And the jobs are moving that direction. By 2018, studies have said that 59% of all the jobs in North Carolina will require a post-secondary credential. Right now, that's why we have kind of pegged that as a target to reach and trying to get to a point where by 2018, 59% of our students have achieved some form of success. They've either gained a credential or they've moved on successfully to the university in pursuit of a credential, or they're still with us. But right now, we're at about 45 to 48% each year. So we've got a long way to go to get to that place to catch up to where the economy is and trying to get more people again from registration lines to graduation lines. So 3 years ago, when I became president of the system, there was a lot of talk and a lot of discussion about we need a long-term strategic plan. We need a 25-year strategic plan. Part of the reason for that was because, you know, we're heading into our 50th year. We had a strategic plan 25 years ago. But I'll be honest with you, I kind of balked at that because I didn't feel comfortable with the notion that we could gather a bunch of people in a room, come up with 20 things that we need to do and say, here's all the things the community college system needs to do. I felt like, and with the board support and with President's Association and local trustees who were participating, said really what we need is rather than a strategic plan, because I don't know any of us are smart enough in this environment to be able to say, here's where things are going to be 10 years and 15 years. But I felt like what we need to have was a strategic focus, a focus that's how do we foster more student success. And so that's where Success NC came from. That's what we're focused on. And that first year was really a time for listening, where we went around to every one of the colleges, and what we learned is that, I would say without exception, every college is doing something unique to further students to success. Colleges don't have as much bandwidth to do all the things, but what was interesting is watching all the different types of things, and certainly technology becomes more and more of that discussion. And so we collected all those things, and we have a variety of initiatives, as you may know, and we tried, part of Emily's role is to help to communicate all those, get feedback on those, and we have a web page, successnc.org, successnc.org, and now that Emily's here, it'll become even richer with communications about that, because it's a pretty dynamic thing, and the innovations come at the local level. They don't come from a committee or from Raleigh pushing down. They come from ideas that happen locally, and so we've tried to collect those and move that forward. So about a year ago it was that we formed two committees. One was a new committee to look at our performance measures. And they have recently reached a milestone in their work in identifying 8 measures that we think should be particularly of focus to us. In some ways, they don't look a whole lot different than things we were doing before, but you will see some real strategic differences in that regard. Our goal in looking at performance measures was not to say, how is every program accountable in some way, but what are the things that we should pay attention to if we're trying to move the dial in terms of students succeeding. So not what's success in Con Ed, what's success in this program, but more what should be the things we should be paying attention to if we're trying to move students forward in terms of student success. The other group we formed, and some of you may have seen this group or played some roles with it, but it was a committee called the Innovative Ideas Committee, which it's not the best name in the world, but it was an interesting group. We started a year ago. Mark Milliron, who with the Gates Foundation, talked about a lot of the innovations taking place at community colleges, particularly technology innovations, because if you know him, he talks a lot about technology innovations. And what we charged the Innovative Ideas Committee, which was chaired by 2 of our presidents, Bill Ingram from Durham Tech and Mary Rittling, and then had representatives from different parts of community college. I think we had 5 presidents on that committee. Ralph Sony, who I believe is on this committee, right? As well as Garrett Henshaw and somebody else. I can't remember who else now. But we had multiple folks from different parts of the community colleges. And the goal was really take all of that information that we had documented from our visits, as well as what we were gathering, what Mark was sharing, what the Gates Foundation, what others were sharing with us about things that are happening across the U.S. in terms of student success at community colleges, and help us prioritize and point to and help think about what are those things that should be most relevant and important to us in trying to move student success, knowing that we can't focus on everything. I mean, that's what we learned from colleges. You can't focus on everything, so you got to try to put your resource to those opportunities that are going to help you overcome the challenges the best. So they spent a lot of time, and really, we all stepped away, and it was amazing to watch them work. And one of the things I will encourage you to do, and we'll find out. I know Vernon, we taped that day the presentation made by at least the presidents who were from that committee who made the presentation to the state board. It was one of the most remarkable presentations I've ever seen on student success anywhere I've gone. And so it will be on our website soon, and when it is, we'll send it out to all of you, because that's something I want to encourage everybody to look at. Now here's where I'm going with all this. And so the Innovative Ideas Committee was charged with looking at this broad context of innovation in terms of student success. What should be our priorities? And one of the things they came back with was very much a technology thing. And I'm going to try to walk you through things they said without my notes, because as Emily and I were walking down here, they blew all over the place, and I thought I had them, but I missed the thing. So somebody out there has my notes. I don't have them right now, so I'll try to remember. But what they came back to is one of the things when they looked at, and you can go on our ncsuccess.org, we have now organized the way we think about student success, whether it's our statewide initiatives or the work that we're doing through what's called completion by design, based on a framework that the Gates Foundation provides, which is called the loss momentum framework. It's the notion of where do you have to pay attention to where you're losing students. So it's based on 4 areas. Connection, how do you connect students? Entry, how do you get students through those first gatekeeper classes? These are sort of the key, as people would refer to, the momentum points. The third area being progress. How do you get students through to that 75% point? Now, if you get students through that 75% point, you're getting those are the key points along the way. And then the last place is completion. How do you get across that finish line? And so we've kind of organized all our initiatives under that connection, entry, progress, completion framework. Our prototyping role, which Central Piedmont plays a real role, and Dave's playing a big role with the data piece on this, uses this framework. They also mapped out all the different places they felt were sort of the innovation levers that we need to be paying attention to along that framework.